Hello, this is Dr. Paul Firnhaber, and many of you out there have seen my videos. I haven't done 10 minutes of truth for a while, but this is one that's really, really important. So today I'm going to talk about a subject that a lot of you are interested in, and that's how do we treat some of the serious infectious and metabolic disorders in our culture. And I just came across 3 articles that are very, very powerful in terms of COVID, cancer, and several other things, and a very effective treatment for some of these issues. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, yeah, you've got an effective treatment for cancer. Well, I'm not saying I can cure that, but I'm saying that there are some things that have come up recently that are very important in terms of understanding how we treat health issues. So the 3 articles are this. One's from a journal called Future Medicinal Chemistry, January 2021. The other one's from the Journal of Medical Virology, July 2022, which was just last month. And the other one is from the journal Cellular and Molecular Life Sciences, February 20th, 2022. So fairly current articles. Now, I'm going to start out by saying this. Your body produces energy through little organelles or tiny little organs within the cell called mitochondria. Mitochondria is very, 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 very important for health and energy and wellness. Anytime you have a destruction or a poisoning or a dysfunction of your mitochondria, that's when your health begins to go downhill. And cancer we were shown back in the 30s is a mitochondrial dysfunctional disease. Now, what happens in cancer is your mitochondria don't work right anymore, and your body makes energy through a process called fermentation of glucose or glucose fermentation. So cancer ferments sugar for energy when mitochondria are not working. Now, one of the things that these articles have talked about, which is very, very interesting, is that when a person is infected with COVID, it changes mitochondrial function. The function of the mitochondria begin to go downhill. When that happens, your cells are weakened and they're much more prone to be infected. In fact, let's see, this article here, okay. This article here says, inflamed cells convert to what's called pathological Warburg-type metabolism, which is a process of fermenting sugar. In infected cells, the loss of mitochondrial melatonin and its powerful anti-inflammatory and antioxidant functions leave the mitochondria vulnerable to reactive oxygen species and inflammatory chemicals. Now, what that means is this, is your mitochondria actually produce its own melatonin. Melatonin is very, very important for mitochondria to work well. So melatonin is not just produced in our brains to make us sleep. Melatonin is a very important part of mitochondrial function or energy production. What happens in disease, for example, in cancer, in SARS-CoV, in Ebola, in many, many diseases, is the mitochondria these cells are infected and the mitochondria stop working. Now, what these 3 articles say is that when a person takes supplemental melatonin, this can provide mitochondria with the melatonin that it needs to work properly. This paper right here talks about how patients were treated with 36 to 72 milligrams of melatonin a day, and they recovered from SARS-CoV very quickly. And all 3 of these papers talk about how supplementing with melatonin when you have SARS or some of these other serious infective or metabolic disorders, actually turn the mitochondria around and allow them to work properly, getting you over the problem much faster. For example, in this Journal of Medical Virology, it says the use of melatonin as a countermeasure to COVID-19 would represent a paradigm shift, since it directs treatment to the infected individual rather than against the virus. In contrast to what vaccines and some of the other drugs do, which are recommended treatments for COVID-19, melatonin greatly enhances the defensive posture of infected patients, making them more resistant to infection by SARS-CoV-2 or any other virus. Melatonin is inexpensive, it has a long shelf life, and there are no side effects to it. Now, another interesting aspect of melatonin is its effects on cancer. Now, one of the books that I'm reading right now is a book by Stephen Gundry called The Plant Paradox. Well, in another book that he wrote called Unlocking the Keto Code, he says this on page 98: melatonin has the power to prevent and reverse cancer through uncoupling mechanisms, enhancing mitochondrial function in the process. Now, here's what he says in his book. I am now prescribing what many would consider ultra-high doses of melatonin, up to 100 milligrams a day in divided doses, to some of my patients diagnosed with dementia or cancer to help them get their mitochondrial function back online. This includes 44 milligrams a day to my beloved Labradoodle, diagnosed with bladder cancer. 2 weeks after starting her supplement, she started peeing like a racehorse and hasn't had a problem since. So melatonin looks like a very, very promising treatment to upregulate and get mitochondrial function online and working in any kind of disease process. We know from the work that Otto Warburg did in Germany back in the 1930s that cancer is a mitochondrial dysfunctional process which causes the body to use a fermentation process of sugar for energy. When this happens, a person's health will go downhill rapidly. And cancer, one of the aspects of cancer is a fermentation of sugar for energy. When we give people melatonin, this can help bring mitochondrial function back and reduce the effects and even maybe keep the patient alive and healthy much longer. So that's all I have for today. These are 3 interesting articles. The gist of this is that melatonin helps mitochondrial function. Mitochondrial dysfunction is one of the basis of many, many diseases. Hope you got something out of this, and we'll do 10 minutes of truth in another week or 2.